Zara had barely slept the night before she set foot on campus. She stood by the towering iron gates, beneath the arch bearing the university's esteemed crest. Her heartbeat rapped like a restless drum. Inhaling a deep breath, she willed the transformation to begin. It was time to introduce the world to Nina. Gone was her sleek, fashionable wardrobe, replaced by baggy sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. Her once expensive hair extensions were tucked beneath a cheap wig, deliberately frizzy and dull. She wore slip-on shoes with slightly torn soles, so uncharacteristic for someone accustomed to designer labels and glittering parties. As she walked across the campus lawn, her steps were purposely awkward. She stumbled on the edge of the sidewalk, nearly losing her balance. A couple of students glanced her way, snickering, but quickly went back to their conversations. It stung more than she cared to admit, but she kept her chin low, hugging her backpack close. Inside the main hall, the tiled floor echoed with hurried footsteps. Freshmen milled around, checking schedules and giggling with newfound friends. Nina spotted a tall girl with braided hair greet a group with a bright smile. Immediately, a pang of envy flared inside her. "This is for the greater good," she reminded herself. "I'm here to discover who values me for me, not my status." A heavy wave of self-consciousness settled over her, yet she summoned enough courage to shuffle into the first-year orientation area. She fumbled with her campus ID, nearly dropping it on the floor. "Stay clumsy," she told herself. "People should see me as the awkward outsider." As she settled into a seat at the back, two students slid away from her as though she carried something contagious. One of them, a girl with impeccably styled hair, whispered to her friend, loud enough for Nina to hear, "She looks lost." They giggled, not bothering to mask their disdain. Despite the discomfort, Zara, hidden beneath the persona of Nina, felt a determination burning inside. She thought of her father's disappointed expression when she announced she'd enroll in a regular university instead of some elite institution. He couldn't understand why she insisted on downgrading her lifestyle. But she was here for a reason. Her experiences in high school had proven that money attracted all sorts of sycophants. She longed to know what real friendship felt like. This, she believed, was the only way. The next morning, Nina navigated the labyrinth of hallways to find her first official class, Introduction to Fashion Design. The door creaked open, and a hush fell across the classroom as heads turned to scrutinize her. A trickle of unease slid down her spine. She saw clusters of students chatting animatedly, but all available seats either had someone's bag or jacket draped over them as a subtle stay-away signal. Resolutely, she searched for a spot. Several gazes followed her, but no one made room. Finally, she noticed a single desk near the window with no one next to it. She planted herself there, relieved. Instantly, she heard the scraping of a nearby chair. A boy wearing a stylish coat stood up and relocated closer to the front, leaving Nina even more isolated. "Seriously?" she mumbled to herself, forcing an awkward smile to mask the hurt. A wave of whispered gossip rattled the room. Voices rose, just low enough that Nina couldn't catch every word, but she gathered enough to know they were speculating about her worn clothes and clumsy demeanor. "They have no idea," she thought. "If they knew I had a trust fund that could buy this building, their attitudes would flip overnight." She tried to focus on the professor's lecture, but the sting of rejection kept her nerves on edge. Despite the tension, Nina willed herself to remain in place, shoulders stiff, face impassive. She was determined to see her plan through, no matter the discomfort. During a break, Nina noticed another solitary figure, a slight girl with short, uneven hair and acne scars dotting her cheeks. She sat in the far corner, eyes fixed on the floor, as though hoping the walls would swallow her. Something about this girl tugged at Nina's heart. She looked lonely, but there was more to it, a kind of resigned acceptance of her isolation. Gathering her courage, Nina left her seat and walked over. The girl glanced up fleetingly, then lowered her gaze again. "Hi," Nina said softly. "I'm Nina." A brief pause. "I'm Lami," the girl replied, voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes betrayed fear, as if she expected to be teased or mocked at any moment. "Nice to meet you, Lami." Nina offered a timid smile, worried that any show of enthusiasm might scare her off. "Are you new here too?" Lami nodded. "Yes, but I've never really fit in anywhere." Nina swallowed. She knew that feeling too well, but for very different reasons. "Same here. Mind if I sit with you?" Lami glanced left and right, as though checking if someone might appear to chase Nina away. "Sure," she said eventually, her voice unsteady. Nina settled into the seat next to her, ignoring the curious side eyes from classmates. An unexpected warmth bloomed in her chest. For the first time since arriving, she felt a faint flicker of companionship. Lami and Nina chatted softly about the orientation, the awkwardness of being newcomers, and the challenges of navigating a new place alone. Their words were few, but in that moment, the act of simply acknowledging each other made everything feel a bit less hostile. A few days later, the drama truly began. Their fashion design instructor, Professor Lawson, breezed into the classroom wearing a flamboyant scarf. She set down her portfolio on the desk and said, "Class, pay attention. The highlight of your semester, and likely your whole year, is about to be revealed." All murmurs ceased. Even those typically engrossed in social media perked up. "I'm pleased to announce," Professor Lawson declared, "that we will hold a major fashion design competition. For you, it counts as 50%, yes, half, of your final grade." A collective gasp swept through the room. Students exchanged excited looks, some high-fiving their friends. Nina tensed, realizing her best shot at proving herself might lie in this very competition. Professor Lawson continued, "Groups will be formed, and each group must produce a collection that reflects innovation, creativity, and personal flair. On the runway day, your designs will be judged by a panel of industry insiders. Start forming your teams. You'll have just 4 weeks to finalize sketches, gather materials, and stitch everything into wearable art." Immediately, the class erupted into chatter. Close friends scrambled to form alliances. Instagram fashionistas gravitated to each other, forming cliques. Nina watched from the edge, uncertain how to approach anyone. She cast a sideways glance at Lami, whose features paled. Clearly, Lami had the same question: who on earth will want us in their group? Yet within Nina, excitement mixed with trepidation. This was her chance. If she could prove her worth in the competition, maybe she'd earn respect on her own merits, not her money. She clenched her jaw. "Bring it on," she thought. When class ended, the scramble for group formation intensified. Nina approached a trio of fashionable girls who had seemed enthusiastic in class discussions. Heart-pounding, she mustered her best friendly tone. "Hi. I was wondering if—" "No," one of them interrupted, not even waiting for Nina to finish. Her name was Tony, a tall girl with a glossy bob. "We're full." "But I saw you only have 2 people," Nina tried to argue. The second girl waved a manicured hand dismissively. "We prefer to keep it small. Quality over quantity." They gave Nina a once-over, eyes lingering on her cheap hoodie. "Sorry." Nina's face burned, but she managed a stiff nod. Determined to keep trying, she spotted a group in the back, 2 boys and a girl hunched over a phone, presumably discussing design ideas. Summoning courage, she approached them. "Hey, I'm Nina. Do you guys need one more person on your team?" They exchanged glances. One boy snorted. "We're set. Actually, we only want experienced or, well, talented members." He turned away, effectively shutting down the conversation. Walking back to her desk, Nina felt each refusal like a jab to her self-esteem. She glanced at Lami, who had also been rejected by multiple groups. Lami's eyes glistened with tears she fought to hide. Soon, the class was abuzz with a rumor. Someone had spread the word that Nina was weird, clumsy, and definitely not the kind of person who'd elevate a fashion project. Lami, with her quiet nature and noticeable acne scars, was labeled the shy one who probably has no sense of style. They were the outcasts, unwanted, overlooked, humiliated. Anxious tension buzzed between the two girls as they emerged from class. They stood by the lockers, scanning the hallway as everyone else boasted about their soon-to-be award-winning teams. Lami's voice trembled when she finally spoke. "We're not going to find anyone willing to team up with us, are we?" Nina swallowed her pride. She'd never had to beg for acceptance before. Here she was, stripped of her usual privileges. In a moment of defiance, she blurted out, "Then we'll do it ourselves." Lami looked taken aback, as if the notion had never crossed her mind. "Just us two? That's allowed, right?" Nina nodded. "The professor said groups can be up to 4, but there's no rule against having only 2 members." She gave Lami a reassuring look. "We can do this." "But my designs aren't good enough for something like this," Lami whispered, hugging her notebook to her chest. "And you, no offense, don't have a background in, well, any of this, right?" "I'll figure it out," Nina said, with more confidence than she felt. "Look, we have no other options. We're in this together, or we fail alone." Just then, a cluster of students passed them, whispering to each other in mocking tones. A tall boy with bleached hair smirked. "Are the rejects forming a losers club?" Anger flushed Nina's face. She glanced at Lami, who shrank under the spotlight. Gathering all her will, Nina straightened her shoulders. "Yes, we are. And we'll blow you away at the competition." Her bold statement drew laughter from the onlookers, but she didn't waver. She turned back to Lami. "We start right now. You in?" Lami hesitated before nodding, determination flickering in her soft brown eyes. Yes, I'm in." They agreed to meet in the library that evening to brainstorm. Lami arrived first, seated at a corner table piled high with fashion references and trend analyses. Nina approached, breath quickening when she saw Lami's anxious posture. "Hey," Nina greeted, taking a seat. "Hey," Lami replied softly. She hesitated, then pulled a battered sketchbook from her bag. Its corners were dog-eared, and the cover bore doodled flowers. "I've been working on a few ideas," she murmured, sliding the book across the table. Nina carefully opened it. Her eyes widened in awe. Each page showcased breathtaking gown designs, meticulously drawn with notes on fabrics, color schemes, and potential accessories. She flipped through, speechless. After a moment, she managed, "Lami, these are incredible." Lami's cheeks flamed with embarrassment. "They're just doodles. Nothing professional." But Nina shook her head vigorously. "No, these are beyond mere sketches. They're detailed. They have life. Why have you never shown these to anyone?" Lami stared at the table. "Who'd bother to look? Everyone thinks I'm an ugly nobody." Nina felt a pang of guilt. She realized Lami's talent had been buried under the weight of bullying and insecurity. "These designs are amazing, Lami. We have to use them. They're exactly what we need for the competition." A new spark lit Lami's eyes. "Really?" "Yes," Nina replied. For the first time since her arrival, she was genuinely excited. She admired another girl's ability, not as a means to further some hidden agenda, but as a revelation of genuine artistry. "This is what I came here for," she thought. To find sincerity and real talent behind unassuming exteriors. Over the next week, they toiled in near secrecy. Classmates had made it clear they considered Nina and Lami the bottom of the barrel. So, the two quietly scrounged for space to plan their designs. Storage rooms and empty hallways weren't safe, they risked sabotage or ridicule. Eventually, they discovered an unused janitor's closet behind the stage in the auditorium. "It smells like old rags and bleach," Lami complained, wrinkling her nose. Nina chuckled, scanning the cramped room. Mops, buckets, and cleaning supplies were shoved into corners. A single flickering bulb hung overhead. It's perfect. No one will look for us here. They set to work immediately. Lami's sketches spread across a foldable table they'd dragged in from the hallway. Nina rummaged through leftover fabric scraps she'd found on discount at a local thrift store. Despite her lack of prior sewing experience, she was willing to learn on the fly. As they measured, cut, and pinned, an unexpected camaraderie blossomed. They exchanged stories. Nina spoke vaguely about her life in a smaller town, omitting the details of her privileged background, while Lami confided in her about growing up shy. She confessed to being teased for her skin and poor social skills. People assume I have no confidence, she said, tears welling in her eyes, but they don't know how hard I try to just show up each day. Nina's heart clenched in empathy. You're braver than you think, Lami, she replied, patting her new friend's shoulder. And together, we'll make something truly unforgettable. Balancing classes, project meetings, and nighttime sewing sessions strained Nina's energy. She often retreated to the library for a quiet spot to study and catch her breath. One late afternoon, she sat in a deserted corner with her books laid out, half listening to the hum of the air conditioning. Suddenly, a soft thud echoed behind her as someone set down their backpack on a nearby table. She glanced up, meeting the gaze of a tall, handsome guy with warm brown eyes. He wore a casual hoodie and jeans, hair neatly trimmed. Though he seemed approachable, Nina felt her guard rising. Don't get distracted, she told herself. She went back to reading, but sensed him studying her from across the table. Moments later, he cleared his throat. Hi, he said gently. You're Nina, right? Her heart lurched. How does he know my name? Yeah, she responded warily, raising an eyebrow. He offered a subdued smile. I'm Dami. I've seen you around campus. Nice to meet you, she said, flipping a page in her textbook as though disinterested. He continued, undeterred. I noticed you and Lami working in the closet near the auditorium. Are you by any chance preparing something for the fashion competition? Nina's brows shot up. You saw us? Just in passing, he clarified. I was helping a friend backstage. No worries, I won't mention it to anyone. She studied his earnest expression. Thanks, I guess. Nervous energy tickled her stomach. She wasn't used to strangers approaching her with friendly conversation, especially not a cute guy. Well, Dami ventured, I think it's awesome you two are forging your own path. This campus can be tough. Nina bit her lip, unsure whether to trust him. Yeah, it can, she agreed, keeping her tone guarded. Anyway, I have a lot to catch up on for class. She gestured at her scattered notes, hoping he'd take the hint. Right. Sorry to bother you. He grabbed his backpack. Maybe I'll see you around. She watched him leave, a swirl of curiosity and confusion in her chest. The moment he was out of sight, she exhaled. He's too interested. Suspicion crept in. Could he have an ulterior motive? Nina reminded herself not to forget why she was here, to detect sincerity or false motives. Stay focused. As the final week of preparation dawned, tension at the university spiked. Everyone scrambled to complete their designs. For Nina and Lami, it felt like do or die. They were in the closet well past midnight, cutting and sewing amid coffee cups and snack wrappers. The night before their dress rehearsal, they decided to go for a quick dinner break. Carefully, they locked their closet door, double-checking that no one could slip in. When they returned an hour later, something was off. The lock hung crookedly, as though forced open. Nina's stomach twisted in panic. Fumbling for the light, she flicked it on, and gasped. The closet was in shambles. Fabric was strewn everywhere, cuts made haphazardly through the most valuable pieces. Lami's sketches lay scattered on the floor, pages torn. Their half-finished gowns had been slashed, ribbons and zippers ripped away. No, 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 no. Lami's voice trembled with despair. She stumbled forward, dropping to her knees. Our designs, they're destroyed. Nina's mind whirled, fury building inside her. Someone had deliberately done this. Her eyes stung with tears, but anger overshadowed shock. This act of sabotage threatened to dismantle all their hard work. Why? She raged silently. Is our success such a threat that they have to ruin everything? She swallowed her tears, placing a hand on Lami's shoulder. We'll fix this, she vowed, though her voice shook. We can still recover. Lami's gaze flickered with doubt, but Nina repeated, we will recover. Shaken, they returned to Lami's dorm room, arms laden with whatever scraps they managed to salvage. There, they took stock of the damage. It was worse than they initially thought. Most of their specialized fabrics were ruined. The designs for certain pieces were too shredded to piece back together. Lami sank onto her bed, tears slipping down her cheeks. It's over, she said softly. We can't compete with just trash. Nina inhaled sharply. Then we'll make trash into something fabulous. She rifled through the scrap pile. Look, we still have enough to experiment. If we mix these leftover fabrics with creative upcycling, like plastic or newspaper or anything we can find, we might create something totally unique. Lami stared at her, astonished. Recycled fashion? Isn't that too risky? We only have a few days left. A fire burned in Nina's eyes. We have no choice. And it might just be so different that it stands out. She placed a comforting hand on Lami's shoulder. I trust your talent. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. The rest of the night, they brainstormed, sketching new designs that incorporated scraps and other unconventional materials. The concept was an edgy, eco-inspired line that showcased resourcefulness and bold artistry. Exhaustion gnawed at them, but each time one felt like giving up, the other pressed on. By the time the sun peeked through the window, they had a plan. Though it was riddled with risks, it glimmered with the hope that they might turn sabotage into the greatest comeback of the semester. Runway day arrived, and the atmosphere on campus crackled with excitement. The auditorium was transformed into a glamorous show space, complete with spotlights, music, and a stylish catwalk. Judges, a mix of professors, local designers, and alumni, settled into the front row, pens and clipboards at the ready. Backstage was a frenzy of final adjustments. Established groups strutted in coordinated outfits, racks of shimmering gowns and tailored suits lined the walls. Nina and Lami's station looked modest by comparison, a meager rack holding 5 outfits pieced together from recycled materials. Among them were plastic overlays, newspaper detailing, and patchwork fabric salvaged from the sabotage. The student MC announced each group, building hype for their collections. Applause rattled the air as the first few teams displayed their polished lines. Their designs were extravagant, obviously created with expensive materials and professional sewing techniques. When it was Nina and Lami's turn, a tense hush fell backstage. Some onlookers snickered, expecting a disaster. Nina clenched her fists around the tattered edges of her top. Okay, she whispered to Lami, we can do this. They stepped onto the stage, hearts pounding. The runway lights blinded them, but they could hear the collective intake of breath from the audience. The music began, an eclectic beat that matched the edgy aesthetic of their designs. One by one, their models, fellow outcasts who had agreed to help, paraded down the catwalk. The dresses shone with creativity, old coffee cup sleeves sewn into a layered skirt, translucent plastic forming a futuristic cape, and bright patchwork patterns that told a story of resilience. The audience buzzed with murmurs of surprise. At the finale, Nina and Lami walked hand in hand onto the stage, wearing their own pieces. For a moment, there was stunned silence. Then, out of nowhere, a scattering of applause broke the tension, quickly growing into thunderous clapping. Cameras flashed. Even the judges looked impressed. Backstage, Nina and Lami barely had time to catch their breath. Squeals of triumph escaped their lips as they hugged tightly. "We did it!" Lami shouted, tears of joy brimming in her eyes. Nina grinned, heart soaring. But an even bigger reveal loomed. Nina knew she couldn't keep her disguise forever. This competition had been her test, and it was time for the final moment of truth. As the event concluded, the MC asked all groups to return on stage for the award ceremony. Nina and Lami stepped out among the throng of shining faces. Nina held her breath, praying that their unconventional line had made enough impact. Then, the head judge announced this year's winners of the campus fashion design competition, Nina and Lami, with their bold, upcycled collection. A roar of cheers and stunned gasps echoed. Students who had mocked them now clapped with a tinge of envy. Lami nearly collapsed in surprise, and Nina supported her as they walked to the center to receive the trophy. The judge extended the microphone to Nina. She glanced at Lami, who nodded encouragingly. Nina took the mic, her voice trembling. "Thank you. This project was born from adversity, from sabotage, and from two people nobody believed in." Without warning, Nina reached up, tugging off her wig. A cascade of silky hair, her real hair, fell around her shoulders. The crowd went deathly silent. Then she removed her clunky glasses, revealing bright eyes beneath. Gasps and murmurs surged through the audience as they recognized the face that had been hiding under the frumpy persona. Zara, the wealthy heiress from high society circles, who some might have seen in tabloids or upscale events. She stood there, no longer playing the timid Nina, but radiating confidence. "My name is actually Zara," she said into the mic, voice steady. "I came to this university disguised as Nina because I wanted to find genuine friends and a real passion for design, without the shadow of my family's money." The crowd collectively held its breath, absorbing the shock. Whispers rippled through the auditorium. Some students were visibly stunned, while others shifted awkwardly, recalling how they had treated Nina before. Tony, the fashionable girl who'd rejected Nina for her team, turned beet red. The boy with bleached hair gawked, mouth agape. Zara recognized a range of emotions crossing the faces: embarrassment, guilt, envy, and relief. Professor Lawson offered a small, knowing smile. Perhaps she had suspected something all along. Someone near the front shouted, "You tricked us." "That's so unfair." Murmurs of agreement flared, some were simply upset at being fooled, others at their conscience for having judged so harshly. Zara held the mic firmly. "I understand you feel deceived, but imagine how I felt, never knowing if people liked me for my heart or my wallet. I came here for an honest experience, to learn who I could trust when I had nothing to offer but myself. The only person who accepted me without question was Lami." All eyes shifted to Lami, who stood stiff and trembling. The applause that followed was hesitant, like the crowd didn't know what to do. Then, one by one, they clapped louder, a symbol of respect for her unwavering kindness in the face of rejection. Some, like Tony, lowered their heads in shame, clearly regretful of how they'd treated both Nina and Lami. Still reeling from the revelation, the MC tried to restore order. "Let's give it up for Zara, Nina, and Lami." The applause, now more enthusiastic, reverberated through the space. As the newly crowned winners stood by the podium, classmates and faculty took turns offering congratulations. A group of students who had once jeered at them arrived, wearing apologetic expressions. I'm sorry for the things I said," Tony confessed, eyes glistening. "I misjudged you and Lami. You both did an amazing job." Zara studied her, recalling the sting of Tony's rejection. Part of her wanted to brush off the apology, but something inside whispered that this moment was bigger than personal resentment. "Thank you," Zara murmured, offering a small smile. "We appreciate that." Lami was bombarded with praise for her artistic brilliance. One of the judges commended her, "Your sketches have a professional flair. Have you considered applying to internships or scholarships?" Lami blushed, hardly able to form words. It was as if she was waking from a dream, one in which her talent was finally recognized. An official from the university handed them a certificate and a scholarship check. "You've brought honor to our fashion program," he said, beaming. Zara couldn't help but think of how ironically events had turned. I was the outcast, and now I stand here with a trophy in my hands. As the congratulations winded down, Zara felt a light tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Dami smiling at her. He waited until the crowd dispersed before speaking quietly. "Congratulations, Zara." She gave him a measured look. "Dami, right?" The memory of their library encounter flickered in her mind. "I'm guessing you're not just some ordinary student?" A playful grin curved his lips. "Guilty. But first, let me say, I admired your dedication to this project. Sabotage, secrets, and you still pulled it off. Impressive." Zara's eyes narrowed. "So what's your story, then?" He hesitated, glancing around to ensure no eavesdroppers. "I'm the dean's son," he admitted softly. "I enrolled under a normal student profile because I wanted genuine connections. You're not the only one who's tired of being judged for what you have rather than who you are." Zara's pulse quickened. She should have guessed something was unique about him, his discreet confidence, the way he seemed to peer straight through her facade. "Does your father know about your little experiment?" she asked, eyebrows raised. Dami chuckled. "He does now, but he supports it. He always taught me to test the waters before trusting blindly. Guess that's something we share in common, huh?" Zara's guarded stance softened. She realized they stood on somewhat equal ground, both from privileged backgrounds, both searching for genuine relationships. Perhaps that explained her pull toward him. A swirl of emotions flooded her chest, intrigue, comfort, and a sliver of fear. "I suppose so," she finally replied, her gaze drifting to the trophy in her arms. "Are there any other surprises I should be aware of?" "Not yet," Dami teased, stepping aside to let her pass. "But who knows what tomorrow brings." Later that evening, Zara found herself perched on a bench outside the dormitory. The evening sky was streaked with gold and lavender, a gentle breeze ruffling her now freed hair. Her phone buzzed with countless messages, some from classmates praising her, others from reporters who'd caught wind of her enrollment under a fake name. She turned it on silent, not ready to face the media frenzy. Lami approached quietly, sitting beside her. "Mind if I ask why you went through all this trouble?" she asked gently. Zara stared at the horizon, the events of the past few weeks swirling in her mind. "When I was in high school, I realized the friends I had only stuck around because of my wealth," she began, her voice tinged with sorrow. "They'd smile to my face, shower me with compliments, but I found out they mocked me behind my back. The final straw came when I overheard one of them laughing about how easy it was to manipulate me for my money." Lami's eyes pooled with empathy. "That's awful." Zara sighed. "I felt betrayed. I decided I had to learn if people could value me without the fancy clothes, lavish parties, or my father's fortune. So, I created Nina. The plan was to enroll here, keep my background hidden, and see who treated me with kindness." Lami swallowed. "I'm so glad we met. Your friendship saved me from feeling hopeless here." A gentle smile curved Zara's lips. She squeezed Lami's hand. "I should be thanking you," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You're the first real friend I've made in ages." Despite the triumph, Zara couldn't help but sense an undercurrent of uncertainty. She was intrigued by Dami, but the memory of her past betrayals made her wary. After the show, she heard rumors swirling that Dami had orchestrated some test of his own. Her suspicions were confirmed a few days later, when Dami approached her in the courtyard, looking oddly disheveled. His usually neat hoodie was rumpled, and he wore scuffed sneakers. "Zara, there's something I need to tell you," he said, voice subdued. She crossed her arms, bracing for impact. "Go on." He exhaled. "I want you to see me as just a regular guy. So well, told my dad I'm cutting off all extra support. I moved to a cheaper dorm, gave up my fancy car, and I'm taking a job at the campus cafe. If we're going to see each other, I want you to know it's not about our family's money. Shock rendered Zara speechless for a moment. Her heart lurched in recognition. He's mimicking my experiment. A flicker of indignation sparked. She'd been the one pulling the strings, not him. You're testing me? After everything I've been through? Dami's gaze softened with regret. I'm sorry, but I had to make sure. I needed to confirm that we're together for genuine reasons, not some shared sense of privilege. I respect you, a lot. You taught me the importance of authenticity. She studied his earnest expression. She wanted to be furious, but she also understood. Isn't that exactly what I did? For a long moment, she said nothing, letting the tension crackle in the air. Finally, she asked quietly, so, where does that leave us? A faint smile curved Dami's lips. I'm hoping we can figure it out together, without wealth muddying the waters. A few weeks passed, during which Zara and Dami spent more time together, this time with both of them stripped of the safety net of their fortunes, at least in appearance. They studied in the library, grabbing cheap coffee between classes, forging a bond over mutual laughter at how different life felt without immediate access to luxuries. Lami, meanwhile, was bombarded with offers from design clubs and mentorship programs. Her once hidden talent had exploded onto the campus scene. One afternoon, she sprinted to Zara's dorm room, breathless with excitement. Zara! You won't believe it, a well-known fashion company scouted me online. Someone posted pictures of our runway show, and they love my designs. Zara's eyes widened, and she squealed in delight, hugging Lami. That's incredible! Did you accept? Do you need a manager? They both laughed. Lami's excitement then morphed into trembling disbelief. Also, someone anonymously paid for me to receive a full scholarship for next year. The letter arrived today. I have no idea who did it. Zara felt tears prick her eyes. She had a hunch it might be her father, or possibly Dami's father, or maybe an unknown admirer who recognized Lami's enormous potential. Regardless, seeing Lami's life change so drastically validated everything Zara had done. Their bond had elevated them both. That evening, Dami invited Zara to a quiet spot by the campus lake. The setting sun cast fiery reflections across the water. They strolled in silence for a while. Then Dami turned to her, face earnest. I've told you my truth, why I enrolled under a secret identity, how I decided to test your sincerity by pretending to be poor. Now I need you to share your final truth. Zara drew in a shaky breath. She glanced at the shimmering waters, collecting her thoughts. My final truth is that I'm falling for you. Despite all the games we've played, or maybe because of them, I see now that we're connected by something real. We can't keep living behind these tests. We need to trust each other. Relief splashed across Dami's features, and before she realized what was happening, he pulled her in for a soft kiss. Warmth spread through Zara, a sense of belonging that melted her fears. As they broke apart, he cupped her face gently. No more secrets, promise? She nodded, heart full. No more secrets. Within days of their victory, Zara and Lami found themselves inundated with requests, campus events, local fashion gatherings, even small-scale sponsorships. One evening, in their old makeshift workshop, now tidied and enhanced with better lighting, they lingered over the tattered scraps that once symbolized sabotage. Staring at the remnants, they remembered how those scraps had fueled their creativity. We should start something, a brand that shows how we rose from the ashes, Lami remarked softly, running her fingers over patchwork squares. Zara's eyes lit up. What if we call it Ashes and Queens? The idea being that from the ashes of our struggles, we've emerged stronger, like queens who reign over our own destiny. Lami's smile lit up her face. That's perfect. They unveiled Ashes and Queens during a campus mini fashion expo, showcasing their upcycled designs. The reception was electric. Students who once ridiculed them now flocked to see their creations. Social media posts about the brand went viral, and a local boutique expressed interest in carrying their pieces. On the last day of the semester, Zara strolled across the quad, hand in hand with Lami. She spotted Lami nearby, seated on a bench with her new scholarship documents. The faint scarring on Lami's cheeks was still there, but her confidence shone brighter than ever. She waved excitedly, beckoning Zara over. Zara sank onto the bench beside her best friend. Lami stood just behind them, arms folded casually. The three exchanged warm smiles, reflecting on how drastically their lives had changed since the day Nina had stumbled into that first class. You know, Lami mused aloud, I used to think my acne and shy demeanor defined me, that I'd always be the odd one out. But you believed in me. We believed in each other. Zara's gaze drifted to the red brick buildings around them, students hustling in and out, no longer shooting judgmental looks her way. We were both outcasts in our own way, she said, voice gentle. But now we've forged something bigger than ourselves. Lami placed a hand on Zara's shoulder. And maybe that's the lesson for everyone, that sometimes it takes stepping away from your comfort zone, or even losing what you thought defined you, to find your real identity. Zara squeezed his hand and then turned to Lami. Ready to build Ashes and Queens into something extraordinary? Lami's eyes glowed with determination. Born ready. They rose, leaving the bench behind, stepping forward into the future they'd painstakingly crafted, no longer overshadowed by illusions or weighed down by insecurities. Whether they wore designer labels or homemade patchwork, they understood one truth: their worth came from the passion in their hearts and the bonds they nurtured, far more than from any fortune they might possess. The end.